What if I told you that some people don't just leave behind memories when they die? They leave behind their entire body. And here's the shocking part. Those bodies don't simply vanish into the ground or rest quietly in a casket. Instead, they become tools of discovery, preserved, dissected and studied, sometimes for decades, shaping the future of medicine and education. Most of us never stop to ask, what really happens to a body once it's donated to science? Does it arrive in a pristine medical facility, handled with solemn rituals? Or does it end up in a plastic-wrapped lab, transported in the back of a pickup truck? The truth is far stranger and far more human than you could imagine. Today we're going to peel back the curtain on a world very few people ever get to see. The journey of donated bodies from life to death and beyond. Some stories will make you shiver. Others will change the way you think about life itself. Welcome to the Wellness Way. If you're ready to explore the hidden truth about death, science, and the ultimate gift one person can give the living, hit that subscribe button now and join us on this unforgettable journey. When most people hear the phrase, donating your body to science, they imagine a simple checkbox on a driver's license, the same way you sign up to be an organ donor. At least that's what I used to think. But the truth is far more complicated and far more meaningful. Donating your body after death isn't a casual decision, it's a deliberate commitment that turns the very end of one life into the beginning of countless lessons for the living. The process begins long before death itself. People who decide to donate their bodies enroll in certified donor programs, not just a DMV registry. They sign paperwork, have conversations with family, and make choices that reveal just how personal this decision really is. One of the biggest choices is whether their remains will eventually be returned to their family or whether they'll become part of a common grave with other donors. At first glance, this sounds like a technical detail, but think about what it really means. Imagine deciding, while you're still alive, that 2 years after your body has been used for education, every part of you, every tissue, every bone, will be cremated and handed back to your family in an urn. That's called a return to family body. Now contrast that with someone who chooses to give themselves to science for a decade or more. In that case, when the time finally comes, their ashes are laid to rest in a shared memorial plot, alongside other donors who made the same choice. To me, that decision is breathtaking. It isn't just about science, it's about legacy. Some people want their families to have closure, to hold the remains and say goodbye in a private way. Others want their contribution to last as long as possible, knowing their body might teach hundreds, even thousands of students over many years. It's a final act of generosity, but also a personal statement about how they want to be remembered. Hearing about this process for the first time shifted my entire perspective. Before, I had pictured science as cold, sterile, and disconnected from human feelings. But the reality is that donating a body to science is deeply human. Behind every cadaver in a lab, there is a person who once laughed, struggled, dreamed, and then made a conscious choice to let their death carry meaning. That realization hit me hard. And then there's the part no one expects, the logistics. There isn't some secret medical courier service with black vans delivering cadavers in the middle of the night. In one story I heard, a new anatomy lab had to pick up its very first body donation themselves. They didn't send for a professional transport company. Instead, they drove a regular Toyota Tacoma pickup truck to the donor program, signed the paperwork and carefully loaded the body into the back. Now imagine driving down a city street surrounded by other cars. while carrying something so profound, a person who had chosen to become an anatomical gift. To everyone else on the road, it was just another truck. But inside that truck was a story of courage, generosity, and science waiting to happen. One of the people involved even joked about wanting to get pulled over by the police, just to see the officer's face when they explained what was in the back. On the surface, that sounds morbid. But to me, it illustrates something important. Even in the strangest, most surreal moments, the work of honouring body donors is grounded in respect, practicality, and sometimes a little bit of humour to ease the weight of it all. It's in these small, almost ordinary details, the choice between ashes returned to family or laid to rest in a common grave, or the image of a body transported in a pickup truck, that the true meaning of donation shines through. This isn't just about anatomy lessons or scientific procedures. It's about people. It's about the intersection between life, death, and what comes after. Every time I think about it, I feel both humbled and challenged. Humbled because these donors have given something that can't be measured in money or recognition. Challenged because it makes me ask myself, if I were in their position, what choice would I make? Would I want my ashes returned to my family, to give them comfort and closure? Or would I choose the common grave, letting my body teach for as long as possible, before finally resting alongside others who shared the same vision? The more I reflect on it, the more I see body donation as one of the most profound forms of service a person can offer. It takes courage to face death with such clarity. It takes love to want your final act to be one that educates and helps others. And it takes a rare kind of vision to look beyond the end of your own life and see the ripple effect it can have on generations to come. That's the hidden truth about body donation. It's not only about the science of preserving and studying a body, it's about the human heart, about choices, about legacy, and about the way, even in death, we have the power to teach the living. When people imagine an anatomy lab, they often picture something cold and sterile. Maybe they think of refrigerated drawers in a morgue or a room filled with stainless steel tables under bright clinical lights. But when I stepped into a real cadaver lab for the first time, I realized how different the reality was. The air wasn't icy cold, the room didn't feel lifeless. Instead, there was a strange mix of warmth, reverence, and curiosity. The secret behind this? Preservation. The bodies in the lab are not stored in freezers or hidden away in morgues. They are embalmed, treated with chemicals that allow them to remain intact for years, sometimes decades. Unlike embalming for a funeral, which is meant to last only a few days for viewing, this process is far more intense. Fluids are carefully injected through arteries, replacing the blood and spreading into every tissue. The result is a transformation. The body becomes a lasting gift, able to withstand years of teaching and learning. It struck me that preservation is more than just chemistry. It's a form of respect. Imagine the responsibility of making sure that someone's final wish, their choice to donate their body, is honoured fully. To do that, their body must be cared for, kept safe, and maintained in a way that allows students to learn without the distraction of decay. In the lab I visited, the instructors would regularly spray the bodies with a special solution, a kind of refreshing mist that kept tissues moist and prevented microbes from growing. It might sound clinical, but standing there and watching it happen felt almost ritualistic, like tending to a sacred space. Then comes the part that most people never think about: dissection. When I used to hear that word, my mind went straight to something gruesome, even barbaric. But in reality, dissection in a teaching lab is treated almost like an art form. Every cut is deliberate. Every layer of muscle or organ that's revealed is done with care, almost like uncovering hidden treasures. And the reason is simple: clarity matters. If the dissection is sloppy, the learning experience is compromised. But if the dissection is clean, precise, and thoughtful, then students can see the human body as it truly is: beautiful, complex, and awe-inspiring. I remember hearing one instructor compare dissection to sculpture. A sculptor carves away at marble to reveal a figure within. In the same way, an anatomist carefully removes tissue to reveal the intricate systems that make us human. That comparison stayed with me because it reframed everything. Dissection wasn't about destruction, it was about revelation. The tools used in this process surprised me as, well, of course there are scalpels and scissors, but there are also power tools. Bone saws and even band saws for cutting through the skull or torso. At first, that seemed shocking. These are tools you'd expect in a workshop, not a lab. But then I realized they're necessary for accessing the deeper structures of the body, and when handled with skill, they provide students with views of anatomy that no textbook, no digital simulation could ever replicate. There was one story about ordering a custom bandsaw blade from a local craftsman. When asked what the blade would be used for, the instructor couldn't resist saying, "For cutting dead bodies." The silence that followed must have been unforgettable. Yet, beneath the humour, there was truth. These tools are not for sensationalism, but for education. Each cut is a doorway into understanding the human body more deeply. And then there are the skeletons, like Jeffrey, the real human skeleton used in the lab. Preparing a skeleton is its own process. Sometimes it involves maceration, where bones are soaked and cleaned over time. Sometimes it involves beetles, yes, flesh-eating beetles that strip away tissue without harming the bone. Hearing about that might sound like something out of a horror movie, but in reality, it's nature doing its work in the service of science. The result is a skeleton that can be studied, held, and used to teach for generations. What struck me the most about all of this wasn't the technical side. It was the mindset. The instructors didn't talk about dissection as if it were a grim necessity. They talked about it with pride, even reverence. They believed that taking the time to make a dissection clean and precise was the best way to honor the donor. To me, that attitude changes everything. It transforms the act from something that might seem disturbing into something meaningful. Think about it. A body that might have been buried and forgotten is instead preserved and carefully studied. Students gather around, touching, observing, asking questions. They learn where nerves run, how muscles attach, how organs interact. These lessons are not abstract, they're real, tactile, unforgettable. And when those students go on to become doctors, nurses, or health professionals, the knowledge they gained will help them save lives. That's the ripple effect of one donated body. In our digital world, it's tempting to believe that technology can replace everything. There are incredible 3D models, virtual reality simulations, and AI-powered anatomy programs. But after seeing a cadaver lab in person, I'm convinced that nothing compares to the real thing. A screen can show you shapes and labels, but it can't replicate the weight of a heart in your hand. It can't show you the subtle textures of tissue or the way structures overlap in three-dimensional space. Only the real human body can do that. And so dissection becomes more than just a teaching tool. It becomes a bridge between death and life, between the generosity of donors and the knowledge that saves future patients. It's art, it's science, and it's humanity all at once. There's a saying I first heard in an anatomy lab that has stayed with me ever since. The dead teach the living. At first it sounded poetic, almost like something you'd find in a philosophy book. But when you walk into a cadaver lab, when you see the bodies laid out on the tables, when you realize that each of them once walked, laughed and loved, and then chose to give themselves to science, that phrase becomes real in a way that's hard to put into words. What struck me most was how differently people react the first time they encounter a donated body. Some students are immediately fascinated. The moment they hold a human heart, they light up with curiosity, as though they've been handed a key to a secret they've been waiting their whole life to unlock. Others, though, struggle. For them, the experience stirs up fear, sadness, or memories of losing someone close. I remember watching one group of students during their first session. One young woman hesitated to even step closer to the table. You could see her body tense, her eyes shifting nervously. Later, I learned her grandmother had passed away just a few weeks earlier. For her, this wasn't just science, it was personal. And yet, with gentle guidance from the instructor, she eventually reached out and touched the donor's hand. It was a quiet, fragile moment, but also a turning point. She wasn't just confronting the reality of death. She was learning how to transform that reality into knowledge, into healing, into a kind of respect that transcends fear. That, to me, is the power of body donation. It doesn't just teach us anatomy. It teaches us how to hold space for both life and death at the same time. It teaches us humility. It teaches us gratitude. And it reminds us that the line between the living and the dead isn't just about what separates us. It's about what connects us. The instructors in these labs often joke, smile, and even laugh during dissections. From the outside, that might seem disrespectful. But once you understand the philosophy behind it, you realize it's quite the opposite. They never make jokes about the donors themselves. Instead, they use humor to make the atmosphere lighter, to help students cope with the weight of what they're experiencing. Beneath the smiles, there is always a deep undercurrent of reverence. And when the lessons begin, when the students lean in and study the details of the body, there's an unmistakable shift in perspective. Suddenly, this isn't about death anymore. It's about life. Every nerve traced, every muscle uncovered, every organ studied, it all feeds into a better understanding of how to keep people alive, how to heal, how to extend the years and quality of life for countless others. I've thought a lot about what it means for someone to make this choice. Most of us, when we imagine our own death, picture a funeral, maybe a burial, maybe an urn sitting on a mantle. We imagine loved ones grieving, remembering, moving on. But a body donor chooses something radically different. They choose to remain present even after death, not in memory alone, but in a tangible, physical way. They choose to let their body become a classroom, a teacher, a guide. And what an extraordinary act of generosity that is. Because think about the ripple effect. One donor might teach hundreds of medical students in person. Those students go on to become doctors, nurses, therapists. They will treat thousands of patients over their careers. And those patients in turn live longer, healthier lives because of the lessons learned from that one donor. In that sense, the gift doesn't stop at the classroom door. It echoes outward, generation after generation. To me, that's where the phrase, "the dead teach the living," takes on its full meaning. It isn't just about passing on anatomical knowledge. It's about showing us that death itself can hold purpose, that even the end of a life can be transformed into a source of growth, healing, and understanding. And yet, there's another layer to this that I can't ignore. In a world obsessed with technology, with virtual simulations and AI models, it's tempting to think that we can replicate everything on a screen. But standing in a lab, watching students handle real tissues, I realize something profound. No software can capture the emotional weight of that experience. No simulation can replicate the humility you feel when you realize that someone's final act was to let you learn from their body. That emotional dimension is irreplaceable. When I left the lab that day, I carried something with me that I didn't expect. It wasn't just a deeper appreciation for the human body. It was a renewed appreciation for life itself. Seeing death up close didn't make me more fearful. It made me more aware of the time I have, of the health I often take for granted, of the ways I can choose to live with more purpose. Maybe that's the greatest lesson the dead teach us, that life is fragile, fleeting, and yet incredibly powerful, that we should use the time we have not just to survive, but to contribute, to connect, and to leave something behind that matters. So yes, the dead teach the living, they teach us anatomy, they teach us humility, but most importantly, they teach us how to live better, fuller, more grateful lives while we still can. After exploring the journey of body donation, from the moment a donor makes their choice, to the preservation and dissection in the lab, to the profound meaning behind the phrase, "the dead teach the living," I find myself both humbled and inspired. What began as a clinical process in my mind has become something deeply human. For me, the biggest realization is this: body donation is not about death at all. It's about life. Each donor turns their passing into an opportunity to teach, to guide, and to empower future generations of doctors, nurses, and health professionals. And in doing so, they extend their influence far beyond their lifetime. That is a legacy few of us ever consider, but it's one that reminds me that we all have the ability to give, even after we're gone. On a personal level, this has made me reflect on how I live my own life right now. Am I making choices that add value to others? Am I leaving behind more than just memories? It's not about whether I would personally donate my body. It's about the principle of contribution. Even in small ways, each of us has the chance to give something meaningful. And when I think about the donors whose bodies are used in labs, I realize they embody the ultimate act of generosity, giving knowledge, giving opportunity, giving life to others through education. The lesson here isn't just for medical students, it's for all of us. The lesson is that life is temporary, but meaning is not. We can transform endings into beginnings. We can turn loss into learning, and we can allow our choices, whether big or small, to ripple out and touch lives we'll never even meet. That's what I carry with me now. A reminder that gratitude shouldn't just be a passing thought, but a way of living. Gratitude for my health, for my loved ones, for the time I still have, and gratitude for the people I'll never know who gave their final gift so that others, including me, could learn, grow, and heal. So I leave you with a simple question. If you could leave behind one gift for the world after you're gone, what would it be? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share them in the comments below so we can learn from one another. And if this video gave you a new perspective, don't forget to subscribe to The Wellness Way. Your support helps us continue to create content that inspires, educates, and challenges us all to live more meaningful lives. Together we can keep these conversations alive and honor the incredible lessons that only the human experience can teach.